You're sitting in Congress, surrounded by your own government, your allies, your critics, your power base. Then a foreign king steps up, looks you in the eye, and in front of the entire nation, calls out everything you stand for without ever saying your name. And then he says it. He tells that room, on live television, with the entire world watching, that his country once burned your house down. Not metaphorically, literally. Set it on fire. And the room laughs. That man was King Charles III of Great Britain, and in that one moment, he may have just pulled off one of the most elegant, calculated power moves any world leader has attempted in years. Welcome, and if you're new here, this channel is your home for everything the royal family is really doing behind the headlines. Stay with me, because what happened during this 4-day visit goes much deeper than that one joke, and by the end of this video, you're going to see this trip in a completely different way. To understand how significant this visit really was, we need to go back a few months. Because when King Charles and Queen Camilla touched down in the United States on April 27, 2026, they were not arriving into a warm alliance. They were stepping into a diplomatic minefield. Behind the scenes, tensions were already high. The United States and Israel had launched military operations against Iran. There were warnings about escalating conflict. The Strait of Hormuz, one of the most critical shipping routes in the world, had been disrupted, threatening Britain's economy directly. British politicians were divided. Some openly called for the visit to be cancelled. At the same time, President Trump had spent months criticizing Britain's leadership, questioning their stance on foreign policy and their level of support. What diplomats call the second special relationship between the US and the UK was under serious strain. Even Britain's own ambassador had privately described that phrase as outdated and full of baggage. Comments that were leaked right as the visit began. So when Charles arrived at the White House, everything was already tense. Even the setting carried weight. A painting inside the building showed Trump's raised fist from the 2024 assassination attempt, a powerful reminder of who held authority in that moment. This was not just another ceremonial visit. It was one of the most delicate diplomatic situations of Charles's reign, and everyone knew it. Then came April 28th, the moment that would define the entire trip. King Charles III stepped into the United States Congress, becoming the first British monarch ever to address a joint session. The last time a British monarch had even visited the US was nearly 2 decades earlier. So this wasn't just symbolic, this was history. Charles began carefully. He spoke about shared history, about World War II, about how the United States helped rebuild Europe. He talked about alliances, about NATO, about global responsibility. Everything was measured, expected, diplomatic. And then he shifted. He turned toward Trump. Now remember, Trump was sitting right there in the room, and Charles, in a very precise, very British way, delivered a line that completely changed the atmosphere. He glanced around and commented on the recent renovations to the White House. Then, with perfect timing, he said, "I'm sorry to say that we British, of course, made our own small attempt at real estate development of the White House in 1814. For a second, it hung in the air. Then the room erupted, because everyone understood the reference. In 1814, during the War of 1812, British troops marched into Washington and burned the White House to the ground. And now, more than 2 centuries later, the British monarch had just reminded the United States of that moment, directly, publicly, and with a smile, in Congress, on live television. So the question is, was that just a joke, or was it something more? Because Charles knew exactly where he was. He knew exactly who he was speaking to, and he knew how carefully every word would be analyzed. This was not accidental. It was a message, delivered through humor, because beneath the laughter, there was real tension. Later that evening, at the state dinner, serious issues came back to the surface. Trump spoke openly about military actions in Iran. He framed the situation in strong, confident terms, even suggesting that Charles agreed with him. And that put the king in an incredibly difficult position. As a constitutional monarch, Charles cannot publicly take sides in political matters. But here he was, being pulled into that narrative in front of cameras. He didn't respond directly, but the silence itself said a lot. Earlier that same day, Charles had also met with major technology leaders, strengthening economic ties between the two countries. There were exchanges of symbolic gifts, each one carefully chosen. Historical documents, references to past alliances, even the famous Resolute desk, originally made from a British ship, became part of the story. Every detail of the visit carried meaning. Nothing was random. Charles was constantly weaving history into the present moment, reminding everyone that this relationship goes far deeper than any single leader or administration. But perhaps the most powerful statement of the entire trip wasn't spoken at all. It happened in silence, thousands of miles away, in California. Prince Harry and Meghan Markle were in the same country, while Charles was making one of the most important visits of his reign. They did not meet. They didn't appear. And according to reports, they didn't even watch the speech. That absence spoke volumes. Because there was a time when something like this would have been unthinkable. Now, it simply reinforces how deep the divide has become. At the same time, Prince William is reportedly moving forward, focused on his role, his responsibilities, and his own family. No drama, no public reaction, just distance. And with every major moment like this, that distance seems to grow. So when you step back and look at the full picture, what did King Charles actually accomplish? He walked into one of the most complicated diplomatic situations of his reign. There was pressure from his own country, tension with the United States, global instability. And instead of escalating anything, he controlled the tone. He used history. He used symbolism. He used humor. And in one carefully delivered line, he reminded everyone of something bigger than the moment. That Britain and America have faced conflict before, that they've rebuilt together, and that their relationship isn't defined by any single disagreement or any single leader. That's the unique power of the monarchy. It doesn't operate like politics. It plays the long game. Continuity, stability, perspective. And in that moment, standing in Congress, Charles showed exactly how that works. Because while everyone expected tension, he delivered something else entirely. Precision, control, and a message that landed perfectly. If you found this breakdown valuable, make sure you subscribe for more deep dives into what's really happening behind the headlines. Drop a comment below. Do you think King Charles handled that moment perfectly, or did he push it too far?